Tell me your name.
I'm Annyce Bohls.
And tell us when did you first set foot in Immanuel Lutheran Church Sanctuary?
Probably June of 1961. I was dating Jesse Bohls Jr., who was a lifetime member. And before we were married, he brought me to church there one Sunday. And I found the church to be, well, I was a little intimidated by it because immediately you got the notion that, no, you couldn't sit in this pew because regular people sat there all the time.
Everybody had an assigned pew?
Everybody kind of had a place.
A special pew.
Well, they just liked their spot. And so I was fearful for quite a while that I would impose on somebody's position.
So that was before you married?
That was, that was after I married.
Okay.
My first impression was nice. I thought it was a well-grounded Lutheran church. That's what I liked about it. The doctrine was solid.
And then you became a member when?
As soon as we were married.
Okay.
June of 61.
So you've volunteered and been very active in Immanuel over the decades. What was your first group that you worked with?
Paris and Spares was my initiating group because before we were married, Jesse, one of our dates was Paris and Spares were going swimming at Barton Springs. And so he asked me to go along. Well, I don't go anywhere in a bathing suit, especially among people that I don't know. So I just made it a point not to bring a bathing suit. Yeah. And so we got to Zilk Park. And of course, who comes and greets me but Shirley Worchin. And she says, come on, I'll show you where to change clothes. I said, oh, I didn't bring a bathing suit. I don't intend to swim. She says, oh no, you've got to come swimming with me. I brought an extra bathing suit. Good Lord. And so that was my initiation into.
So who started Paris and Spares? Do you know
that? I don't know. That was before I came.
Okay. All right. So then the next thing, you had children. What else did you do? Were you involved in Sunday school or Bible school?
Yes. And eventually Jesse and I both taught Sunday school in the beginning.
Were you teaching in the basement? Where was Sunday school at that time?
No, it was not. The basement was not in use.
The education building had been built.
Well, it really hadn't.
Okay.
So I really don't remember.
Okay.
No, I don't remember.
Okay, so eventually then you had a lot of talents and you were choir director for a while.
Yes.
So tell us about your practices and cantatas and special events that your choir did.
I really enjoyed working with choir. And we had good people who were very faithful. None of them were professional singers, but they were willing to sing to the Lord, and that's what we did. I remember when we just first started bell choir, I think that was given in memory of who? Those
Alvina
bells?
Kemple.
Okay.
The Kemple, a family gave that after Grandma Kemple passed away.
Yeah, and that was really nice. I thought our bell choir was good. We also had a senior choir, and there had been some controversy in that when I just first came because...
Senior bell choir?
No, senior choir.
Oh, okay.
Senior choir.
Yes.
And so adult choir. So I kind of stepped into a little bit of a mess. But people were very, in those days, there were a few cliques. And families were very strong.
Right.
But being an outsider, I could come in and do things that a lot of people could not have gotten by with. And they were very, very nice. So we had a nice, never a professional choir, but always a good choir. So and then we had JC and Company, and that was with you, Verna Jean.
So the senior choir, let's go back, they sang in the balcony, and at that time the balcony had pews.
Yes.
And you would have, there was a goodly number of men that were in the choir with bass and tenor voices. You had all four parts that really had nice harmony. And then on occasion, the cantata, they wanted it in front of the church.
Uh-huh.
And that was some of the choir members didn't really want to be in front of everybody, but they did it.
Yeah. Well, and really it was not, to me it was harder to do because the organ was upstairs and we were singing down in the front. Yeah. But that all worked out.
So with JC and Company, which was a group of young people, and that stood for Jesus Christ and Company.
Correct.
They were very committed. Most of them were post-confirmation. So most of them were in high school.
Correct.
Or beyond. And that was the first time that a guitar was used in church. Do you remember that?
I remember teaching guitar because I thought, guitar was just coming in and nobody was playing it at church. And so I turned on KLRU and learned. I went out in Jesse's shop and got a long stick and marked it off in frets and pretended that was a guitar. And I taught myself chords and wrote them down to the songs that the kids did. And then Jackie and Judy and Cindy, that group came in with real guitars. And they picked it up. And Bubba Whelan was in there. And of course, his mother, once she found out he liked guitar, she bought him the nicest guitar and gave him professional lessons. Then he came in and took over and taught all those kids to play guitar. Okay. So they were really good. They were really good.
Okay, and then JC and Company spanned it probably about 20 years or so.
It was a long time.
But you continued to teach guitar, and then your son...
No. As soon as Bubba came in,
okay, Bubba then took that. But then Sid, you told me Sid taught Brian Marker.
Yes.
That is an interesting story. And then Brian got, he's very talented and now
extremely talented, but was so shy. And so he expressed an interest. And I said to Sid, why don't you take him under your wing? And sure enough, those two got together and look how good he is now. So that worked out really well.
Right.
But now, see, Verna Jean, you have to take a lot of credit for that JC and Company. They did a lot of stuff. We took those kids down to the coast. We visited churches and sang for them. They were really good witnesses. And I think one of the biggest things to come out of that, and not many churches, I don't know if any other church can say this, our church, out of that group, had 6 young men become ministers. We now, at this present time, have 6 men in the ministry.
That are ordained.
That are ordained ministers.
And then I would add to that the number of even the females that are leading music and playing in different congregations.
Yes.
That have continued to witness and to spread the word.
And see Joy and Jackie starting up.
Right. And then Leicester was at Lockhart and at Mason.
And now she's doing it in Mason.
I think Grace was. I think the interesting thing, one other story on them is how those, we call them kids because they were teenagers, but like Brian Marker, they wrote songs in the back of a pickup truck because the group would not only sing in church, but they would do other activities together. But they were always praising the Lord wherever they were and whatever they did.
I'll never forget. I think Shirley and Otto Warchin and those parents of those kids, they took them to the lake a lot, so they did lots of stuff together besides just church. But I remember we would have JC and Company on Wednesday nights in the summer on the front steps of the church. And as soon as it was over with, those boys got out a volleyball and they played head ball and they bounced that ball like this from head to head. Scared me to death. I just knew it was going to damage their brains, but you couldn't tell them anything. And they loved it, and that's what kept them coming. A whole lot of fellowship, more so than music. But it turned out good.
Okay. Again, with your creative ideas, it was through your efforts along with you got a team together, but we got a group to make a round stage and then to put on a production that involved nearly 80 to 100 volunteers from in our congregation at that time. So tell us a little bit about those productions, about the stage first.
Well, that was under Ray Kramer's direction. And he had the idea that he wanted a round stage, and he talked to Lamar Weiss. Lamar Weiss could build anything, absolutely no plans. And the next thing you know, we had this huge, I don't know how big it is, it's a huge round stage that rotates. And that worked really well.
So it was, and that was then done in the current parish hall, and he did all the welding.
Oh,
and,
yes.
Then they made frames for the backdrops, and it's still one of our current day school people that did a lot of the painting.
Yes. Jan.
Yes, Jan.
Spears.
Yes, yes. And Pastor Kramer again had that artistic talent, and he actually did the big window in the library, the Windows of the World, and also contributed the current chapel windows.
Yes.
That was his gift to the congregation when he retired from ministry at Immanuel. And our current members who worship in the chapel, it's really a nice place for them. So
I remember the first year that we built the parish hall. I mean, the big auditorium. The parish hall was built years before. And then we built that big auditorium, and I was so delighted because we always had our Christmas program for the kids, the Sunday school Christmas program in the church. And I mean, we had lots of kids, and they would all have to stand in the altar area to be seen. Well, if your kid was on the first or the second row, it was seen. Or if it was taller, it was seen. But otherwise, you just could not see those children. And it was such a pity. And so I was so delighted when that first parish hall, when we were going to use that for Christmas that year. And people came to me and said, no, we've always had the Sunday school Christmas program in the church, and we must have it in the church. We just, and it wasn't just one person, it was a lot of people. And I thought, we cannot waste this opportunity. So I got to thinking, and Pears and Sparrows always came up to our cabin on Lake Travis in November. And I had this idea, and I told them, I really want to get people into the parish hall for Christmas. What did they think about if I asked every family to make a star, and we would hang it from the ceiling? Now, can you imagine those poor men hanging all these stars from the ceiling?
But they did.
They did. And that way, maybe people would want to come over and see the stars. And we were at Pears and Sparrows, and I was asking, do you think this is a good idea? It wasn't 10 minutes later, Lamar Weiss came back into the cabin and says, carrying that star right there,
He picked up some
Annyce,
sticks.
is this what you're talking about? Sticks and wire that he found outside in the yard.
Yes.
Isn't that neat?
Yeah.
But that shows you what kind of smart, inventive people we have in our church. We are truly blessed with.
Well, that group of men, I'm going to talk about your Jesse for a moment. Jesse dedicated 2 years of his life as a missionary to New Guinea, and I think he learned their language. Tell us a little bit about his ministry or his service in New Guinea. So Jesse was about how old? 20-something when he went to New Guinea, I would guess.
Yeah, probably 23,
Okay. And
24. I don't know.
What did he do while he was in New Guinea?
He went over there as a parish mission builder. They had an International Luther League meeting at Texas A&M that summer, the summer of 1956. And Dr. Reiki said that they were looking for foreign mission builders, young men who would go over there and help build things. And so Jesse volunteered and went over there. And the first thing that when they got there, they had to wade to shore. And so he and there were 3 of those guys, he and one of these other guys built a boat dock so that from then on you could get off of the ship and get onto the shore. And then while he was there, he also built a nurses station for the, they had some people there. They had a little mission church there.
And of course, then when Jesse returned, he became a builder, a carpenter like
And that's
Jesus.
where he learned his trade. Isn't that
Right.
something? Because he was a farmer when he left.
Yes.
And when he came back, he and Herbert were trying to farm together, and it just didn't really work. There wasn't enough land. It just did not work. They didn't have enough for two brothers.
And so he built custom homes.
Started building homes.
And then in his, after Habitat for Humanity, which is a wonderful program to help build homes for people who needed them, Jesse was active in that in the Central Texas area mostly.
Yes, but there were a lot of men from here. I guess it was probably 6, 7, 8 men that would go on Saturdays, every Saturday in the summer, and help build houses whenever they had a house going in there.
Okay, so during Lent, we have the Wednesday evening services, actually Wednesday morning also too. Mm-hmm. And they usually it's a special theme that the pastor comes up with, but you were always helpful in suggesting possible themes. And tell us about some of those. I know one was the Dr. Seuss.
Well, we did that. That's the year that we did not have a pastor during Lent. And so that was kind of the sermon. And we applied it. We read a Dr. Seuss story and then talked about some of the lessons that we could learn from the Dr. Seuss stories.
Mm-hmm. And then during Holy Week, Good Friday is a very special service. It was special. I think about the Good Friday service even when Pastor Mulebrad was here and how the choir how that service went.
I just remember that he placed a lot of emphasis on that service, but it was very solemn, as I recall. I'm not real sure that even sang. I'm sure we didn't sing on Good Friday.
He would sing the parts to "Jesus Keep Me Near the Cross" and crescendo. In other words,
yeah,
it got
that's
louder
true. That's
and
very
louder
true.
and louder.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, when Jesus was crucified, it was just like you had to have full organ, and it was like a big bam.
Yeah.
And then dead silence for the rest of the service.
Yeah.
But then again, in the last, I don't know how many years, I'm going to just say in the last decade anyways, the idea came up of the Walk to Calvary, which involved congregations and Christians throughout our community. And you scheduled it. You were the person behind it to come up with the idea, to call the different Christian churches to get them involved. It started at the Methodist Church, and it would walk, the people would walk carrying the cross, the trail underneath the road, and we had the 7 stations, and then and we would chant along the way, and then we would get to Immanuel, where the 3 crosses were out by the cemetery. So tell us where that idea, how that happened, and how it's grown. So now it's 100 or more people. I mean, hundreds of people.
For years after Sid and Jenny, our son and daughter-in-law, who are pastors in Mason City, Iowa, they always had a walk to Calvary in Mason City, and they would walk from church to church. And Jesse and I would go up and babysit the boys because they had 2 little boys while they led their churches, all of the churches there. And then in 2015, after Jesse's death, I was trying to think of something to do as a memorial because Jesse was so special to me, and was so special to the church. I decided to start it down here in Jesse's memory. So the Walk to Calvary is in honor of Annyce Bohls.
That was true. And speaking of that, I want to talk about Jesse's mother, Erna. I don't know her age. I think she was nearly 100 years old, wasn't she?
She died at 102 or 103, yeah.
But she was also a long-time Sunday school teacher.
Oh, for years. I'll bet you 60, 70 years, I'm sure.
Right.
And she loved to teach Sunday school.
Right.
And she always taught those kind of like confirmation age kids, I think, didn't she? Those older kids.
Older ones, which is an interesting. You served on the church council for a while.
I think 1 term, and hated it. Well, because it's just taking care of business that has to be taken care of, but there's no fun to it. Right. And I really felt like I'm not good at decision making and all that kinds of stuff. And I felt like my talents, I just felt like my talents were wasted sitting on church council. Yeah. I admire church council members, and we could not do without them, but that was not my calling.
Okay, I'm going to talk about another person, Walt Smith. He was on the council and he was on music and worship forever. But he was always diligent and would get things done. But if there was a project, he was also one that would make it become reality. Mm-hmm. You want to say anything about Walt?
I was trying to think of a good story of him, and they're all just very family oriented. But okay. He was really good. He was a very active
He could
member.
Raise money if we needed it.
Yeah.
For a particular project, he would just really stay with it. The church went through several different hymnals during their time, and every new hymnal would have new songs, and the congregation never wanted to sing a brand new song. But somehow you were able to maneuver and with the choir or engaging people, or the way, I think it was your teacher heart, you were able to get people to sing the new songs.
Yeah. Well, you always picked the ones that you thought would be the most singable if it was new. And quite often I would have the choir sing it as an anthem, or something before. And then we would teach it to the church. But they were always open to that.
Right. But I can remember times also when you would have, we would sing something in a round where the people on the left side would sing first, and then the people on the right side would come in, and they would have to follow the instructions. Or the women would sing this verse, and the men would sing this verse. So you brought a little bit of into the service, spontaneous things that they couldn't sleep during church.
And then before you know it, they knew the song. And so it was just a catchy way to introduce a new hymn.
When you look back, there were trials and tribulations in Immanuel. Can you remember anything and how we just kept going and getting over the hurdles that seemed to come on occasion?
It just always seemed like people were willing to listen, although they were very set in their ways. They were still open-minded enough, and they loved their church enough that they would eventually come around to see if you had a good reason behind anything. They would always back you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anything else that you can think of that I think we've covered? We talked about, Norma Lissa. I don't have anybody else to talk to. Norma was a very dedicated person that she took care of memorials for years and years. She donated the current piano that became our first keyboard, electronic keyboard, up in the sanctuary, and then now it's in the chapel. But again, she was one of those, if she could see a reason for, she would find a way to make it a reality.
She was a very opinionated lady, and sometimes was very sharp with her tongue. But she had a golden heart, and you could count on her to back you if you gave her a good reason and made it justified. She was really a good person. Yeah. The only thing I would like to mention is after our daughter died in 1972, at the age of 5 months, I made baptismal napkins for every child that was baptized at the church with their initials on one side and the date of their baptism, and gave it to every child.
Cross on it,
and it had a white cross. Mm-hmm.
Yes,
but that was a memorial.
Right.
Helped me heal, and I was hoping that people, because I was so delighted that she had been baptized, because she became ill very quickly, and I took her into the doctor. He sent me immediately to Brackenridge, and I must say that the nurse that came in asked me immediately, I didn't realize she was that sick, had she been baptized? And I said yes, that she had. And because that lady would have been willing to baptize her. So I was so thrilled that I had had my child baptized when she was 5 weeks old, because it had just happened.
Right.
But you know, God works in wondrous ways, because there I was at Breckenridge all by myself with a child that I did not realize was critically ill. And who walked down the hall but one of my classmates from TLC who I had not seen in 15 years. You think God doesn't provide when you need provision.
Okay.
I have been truly blessed.
That is true.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it? Yeah, it's amazing. I think my 3 children, no, 2 of mine that were baptized here, one was at Faith, but have that napkin. And I think even the grandchildren, because it was, yeah. I don't know that they still do it today.
They give the baptism. I think they probably give them the napkin, but I'm sure nothing is embroidered on it.
Right. Yeah. That's a good one. Okay. Luther League conventions. You went to a Luther League convention.
Oh, so did you?
Yes. But the idea of what Luther League, the organization that the church had for young people, it really impacted so many lives. And it's, I think it was a real, during that formative period of your life, you really made the commitment for a lifelong relationship with your Lord.
Yeah. I think that's why our church has been such a good church, because they've always cared for the youth. We've always had an active Luther League, because remember we had that old Luther League building when I just first came, and they use that all the time. You just can't.
A youth program is critical.
Yes, it is really critical. Really critical.
It determines the parenting later, the church membership, etc. Annyce, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your stories. You've made such a difference. You've impacted so many people with your faith that you've shared. And in closure, can you just share what Immanuel has meant to you? Immanuel
has made such an impression on my life, and it has carried me through so many trying times. I feel the worth of our church is that it is doctrinally sound. We believe Jesus Christ is Lord, and we proclaim it. And I think that's the mission of our church. And I'm delighted to be part of it.